50 points. That's the gap Lewis Hamilton is chasing down as Formula One returns from its summer break. And on the same weekend, Ferrari finally shows its hand for the second half of the season. The man running the team just told reporters something that sounds a lot more like a warning than a promise. Here's what actually happened in order. Ferrari arrives at Zandvoort with a new floor on the SF26, a direct evolution of the specification that won Hamilton his first Ferrari race back in Barcelona in June. According to Paolo Filicetti of Gazzetta dello Sport, this upgrade wasn't even originally planned before Silverstone. It only got greenlit after Ferrari's engineers looked at the team's wildly different performances in Austria and Britain and identified something in the Barcelona concept worth pushing further. Then they did something teams rarely manage this late in a season. They accelerated design and production hard enough to have it ready before the mandatory summer shutdown even started. That's not a routine update. That's a team burning extra hours in the factory specifically because they saw an opportunity and didn't want to lose the window. If you're watching from outside the usual paddock hotspots, drop your country below, because we always want to know how far this story is actually traveling. So here's the fact of the day, stated plainly. Ferrari rushed a floor upgrade to be ready for Zandvoort, right as the championship enters its second half, right as Hamilton sits 50 points behind championship leader Kimi Antonelli, with George Russell just 9 points ahead of him in third. This is not a small technical footnote. This is Ferrari making a calculated bet that the second half of the season is winnable and building the car to match that bet. But that's only half the story, because the floor isn't the only upgrade on the table. Ferrari has also confirmed its second permitted engine development of the season, an evolution codenamed Adduo 2, arriving next at Monza. The revised power unit reportedly features a turbine with a larger diameter impeller, aimed specifically at closing the straight-line speed deficit that has quietly cost Ferrari lap time all year. This is the part where Vasseur's answer gets interesting, because it isn't the answer you'd expect from a team principal trying to sell hope to his fan base heading into the title run-in. Asked directly whether the Monza engine specification could finally bring Ferrari level with Mercedes on power, Vasseur didn't hedge. He didn't deflect. He said 3 words: "I'd say no." Let that sit for a second, because a team principal choosing bluntness over spin right as his driver is fighting for a championship is not the default move. The easy answer, the safe answer, the answer that keeps fans excited through a summer break, would have been something vague and hopeful. Vasseur chose the opposite. He kept going too. Mercedes is still ahead, at least in terms of engine performance, he told Auto Hebdo. It was expected to be tough on us for a year on the engine, and considering the starting deficit, we're doing pretty well. And then the line that actually tells you what he's protecting against. Obviously, it's not enough because we want to win. Here's the interrogation this deserves. Question 1. Why would a team principal deliberately undersell an upgrade his own team rushed production to deliver early? Question 2. If the gap is really as small as he claims, 1 or 2 tenths per lap in engine power alone, why frame it as something that won't be enough? Question 3. Is Vasseur managing Ferrari's expectations, or is he managing Hamilton's? Because here's what Vasseur said when pressed on the actual size of the gap. When you look at Mercedes and Red Bull, you're talking about a 1 or 2 tenths per lap difference in engine power. 1 or 2 tenths. That's the number this entire video orbits, and it's worth sitting with, because in a championship battle this tight, 1 or 2 tenths per lap isn't a footnote. It's the difference between pole and third on the grid. It's the difference between defending a position into turn 1 and getting swallowed by it. Now, here's the part where a chef's caution starts looking less like realism and more like something else entirely. Ferrari didn't rush a floor upgrade to Zandvoort because the team is comfortable playing for second. Teams that are settling for a soft finish to a season don't burn extra factory hours accelerating parts ahead of a mandatory shutdown. That is what a team does when someone internally believes there's a real title fight still on the table, and that urgency does not match the tone of Vasseur's public comments about the engine. Put those two things side by side. A floor rushed into production early because Ferrari saw an opening, and a team principal telling the press, on the record, that the next engine upgrade won't be enough to close the gap. Those two facts don't contradict each other exactly, but they don't sit comfortably together either. One says we're pushing hard because we think we can win this. The other says, don't get your hopes up about the part of the car that actually decides races on the long straights. Let's talk about what this actually means in consequence, not abstraction. 50 points separate Hamilton from Antonelli at the top of the standings right now. George Russell sits just 9 points ahead of Hamilton in third. That means every tenth of a second Ferrari finds between now and Abu Dhabi doesn't just help Hamilton chase the championship lead, it decides whether he's fighting for first or defending third against his old Mercedes teammate. 1 or 2 tenths per lap of engine deficit over a full lap at a circuit like Monza with its long straights is not a rounding error. It's the kind of number that turns a podium into a fourth-place finish, race after race, for the rest of the season. Here's the honest steel man for Vasseur's caution, because it deserves airtime. A team principal who has watched Ferrari underdeliver on hype for 2 decades has every reason to manage expectations publicly, even when the internal mood is more optimistic. Over-promising and then falling short in September would be far worse for morale, for sponsors, and for Hamilton's own confidence than simply being blunt now and outperforming that blunt assessment later. It's entirely possible Vasseur genuinely believes the engine gap won't close, full stop, and there's nothing hidden in that at all. But that explanation doesn't quite account for the timing of the floor. If Vasseur genuinely believed the fight for the title was effectively over on power alone, there would be less reason to rush a chassis upgrade specifically to be ready before the summer break. Teams that believe they're out of contention manage their development budget toward next year's car. Ferrari, right now, is doing the opposite. We're not going to tell you which red is correct, because certainty here would be dishonest, and nobody outside Maranello actually knows what's driving that floor timeline. What we can tell you is that this is a legitimate question, not an accusation against Vasseur. Team principals manage expectations for real reasons all the time, but when the actions, an accelerated floor upgrade, and the words, a blunt no on engine parity, point in 2 different directions, the honest thing to do is notice the gap rather than pretend it isn't there. So here's where this leaves us heading into Zandvoort's sprint weekend. Ferrari has the floor it wanted. Hamilton showed strong early pace in FP1, close behind the frontrunners, despite the compressed single practice session sprint weekends allow. The engine upgrade, the one Vasseur himself says won't fully close the gap, is still 3 race weekends away at Monza. And somewhere between we want to win and I'd say no, Ferrari's actual title strategy for the rest of 2026 is sitting, mostly unstated for anyone paying close enough attention to notice. Is this a team quietly building towards something bigger than Vasseur is letting on? Or is this exactly what it looks like, a genuine engine deficit that no amount of floor development can fully paper over? Vote below. We covered Ferrari's Barcelona floor breakthrough back when it debuted in June, and this weekend's upgrade builds directly on that story. So check that video if you want the full technical arc. Monza is next, and that's when we find out whether Vasseur's I'd say no turns out to be honest caution, or the kind of sandbagging every team principal in this sport has done before. Like this, if you think Ferrari is playing this closer to the chest than they're letting on, comment your prediction for Monza, and subscribe so you're here when that engine upgrade actually lands. Until the next one.